Hey guys, it's Pania. I am back to show you how to make my change of heart vest using the granny squares that I made previously in my prior video. So if you have not seen how to make these granny squares and triangle granny squares, please visit that video first and you can watch that video via the link above here. So for this vest, I'm using the big twist cotton and we have a pewter color and also the color black. And you'll need a total of 6 of each of these yarns for this project. I'm using this gray color here for the front, and then I have a black one as well that's for the back, and it's just the opposite. So the main square is black and then the outline and those tiny little thing are in the gray color. As you can see here, I've already attached all the granny squares and made the border for the black piece. So in this video, I'm going to show you how I attach all of my granny squares together. And you can choose whatever color you want. My main was a gray front and a black back, but the colors are alternating. So anyway, today I am using 2 hook. I have the Boy F 3.75mm hook, and this is the main one for the pattern, and then the larger hook here is to help connect all the granny squares together, and this is the I hook 5.25mm hook. You'll also need a scissor and a yarn needle, and I didn't put in here, but maybe 1 or 2 stitch marker. So for this part here, I made only 2 of the triangles for the front of my vest, and then I made 14 of these gray ones for the front of the vest as well. So these 2, it'll be like facing like this, and then the rest of the other granny squares are going to be on the side and the bottom. For the back side, I made total of 16 total black squares, so you need quite a bit of these to make your vest. So for the next part of this video, I'm going to show you how I seam up horizontally and vertically all of the granny squares together, and then I'll show you how I make the border around the front and the back of the vest as well, so that it'll be a nice and neat piece to connect together. So to start, I'm going to align 4 of these squares horizontally, and then I'm going to just bring 4 more on top. So you'll make kind of like of a square, so you have a 4x4, and then just make sure that the 2 triangles are on the top and the middle. So for my vest, I want the main border to be a black color, so I'm using the black here to seam all of the sides of the granny square together. And when you do seam the back of the vest, for my sweater, it'll be using the pewter or the gray yarn. So I'm just going to start with the slip knot here. Attach my yarn. I'm just going to make it smaller before I actually attach my granny square. I'm just going to move these so you can see how I start with 2 of the granny squares. So I like to go into the top of the granny square, the top one up here, and then into the bottom one. So what I'm doing here is I'm looking for the chain 1 piece on the right side of the bottom top granny square, and then find that chain 1 piece also on the bottom right corner of the bottom granny square, and then attach the yarn here. And what I'm doing, I'm basically doing slip stitches all the way across, but to start I will go through both of those chain 1 space and then just yarn over and pull through and cinch the tail here so it's secure. So now you have this part. What I would do is I'm just gonna zoom so that you can see this a little bit more in depth, especially that the yarn is in color black. And my hands are so dry, so please don't mind that. Anyways, so right here, I'm just gonna show you with my needle. So you can see this is the chain 1 space, and then you'll see that besides the needle, there's 1 single crochet, and then there's another one over there. So this is chain 1. So this one right here is the stitch that belongs to that single crochet, and this is the other one on the other side. So there's 1 stitch on each side of the chain 1 space between where we made a slip stitch. So knowing that, we're gonna go into the next stitch, which is this one, and we're only going into the inner loop between the granny squares, so not the top loop but the bottom loop of the granny squares. So we'll go into that one. Otherwise, if we go into this one, you will create kind of a bumpier seam. So we're just doing one loop only, so we'll go in that one. And then we'll do the same thing to that bottom granny square. So this is the chain one space, and then that's one single crochet, and there's the other single crochet. So I'm going to go into this stitch here, but only in that bottom loop, which is this one here. So it could be a little bit tight because we just made a slip stitch in that little corner space, so it might be a little difficult here, but that's what you will do, insert it into that stitch. So I'm actually using the I-5.25mm hook to seam the patterns up together, because this purple one, if you're using that one, when you complete the project, it might be too tight in certain spots. So this pink one just gives it a little bit more slack. Though anyway, yarn over and pull through all of the loops on your hook. And then we're going to do the same thing to each of the stitches across. So we'll go into the top stitch and then the bottom stitch only in the back loops, yarn over and pull through all of the loops on the hook. So basically just slip stitches into the back loops of the granny squares only. So you'll keep slip stitching into each of the loops in the back only, all the way across to the other corner. So finally, here at the other side of the corner, as you can see here, we've got a chain one space here, and then we've got one more single crochet here to make a slip stitch. So that's where we just made a slip stitch, and that's the top of the single crochet we still have to go to, and then that's the bottom, and that's the other chain one. So we've got 2 more stitches total for these 2 granny square. So I'll slip stitch into that top one and the bottom one, last single crochet, and then we'll slip stitch into the chain one space of that top and that bottom granny square together. So now we have both of these 2 granny square attached together, and you can see here now that it's nice and neat and it's not as tight as using the purple hook. But anyways, now I'm going to bring 2 more granny squares, and I'm going to show you how I seam these across horizontally. So we'll do the same thing. We'll go into that chain one space of the next granny square here, and then also the bottom. So right into this chain one space, and then we'll yarn over and then pull through. And then we'll go into the next stitch on the top granny square only in the back loop, and then the back loop of the next stitch from the bottom granny square, yarn over and pull through all of the loops. So basically we're just doing the same slip stitch here all the way across, and making sure to also go into the chain one space of each corner. So I will attach all of the granny squares horizontally like this across until you have 4 columns. So I only have 2 columns here so far and 2 rows. So I would do 2 more columns all the way across, and once you have 4 across like that, you can just finish here. So cut off the yarn, yarn over and pull through and secure, and then continue along making the other rows above. So the only thing that's a little bit different is when you do the triangle at the center at the top. So I will show you how I would do that in the next part here. So you can see here I have 3 of my rows all seamed already, and then I'm going to show you the top row where there's that 2 triangles in the center. so that you know how a little bit different it might just be. It's the same concept except that in the center there's an additional stitch that's different you'll have to do. So I'm going to start off with a slip knot, and then I'm going to just start making my slip stitch from this right side of the corner all the way across to the center, and then I'll show you how different it is at the center of those two triangles. Now I'm at the end of the first triangle here, and you'll see that I just did a slip stitch in that very last single crochet of the triangle, and next to it is the chain one space. And so if you look at the granny square below, there's one single crochet you still have to go into, and then a chain one space that's next. So what I'm going to go and do is I will go into the chain one space and make a slip stitch with the last single crochet of the granny square. So go right in here to the top of that chain space, and then into the last single crochet of the bottom granny square and slip stitch. And then we're going to go again into that chain space, and then the bottom chain space, which is the granny square, yarn over, and then just pull through and slip stitch there. Now we're going to attach the other triangle, and we'll do the same thing. So you'll find that chain two space of that smaller angle here. So insert your hook into that chain two space of the triangle, and then insert it into that chain one space of the triangle below, and then yarn over and make your slip stitch here. Now we're going to go back into the chain two space in the triangle, and then into the back loop of that first stitch in the granny square below and make a slip stitch. And then we'll find the next single crochet from the granny square. So you can see here that's the chain two space, and then this is your first single crochet, and that's the one from the longer side of the triangle. So we're going to go into that stitch only in the back loop, and then find the next stitch, which can be a little tight here, and make your slip stitch. And then you'll do that all the way across to the end of the row, and then yarn over and pull through. And now I have all of the granny squares that I need for the front of the chest attached horizontally. Now I'm going to turn the top of the vest here on its side so that we can start attaching the granny square in these little spaces that haven't been attached. So what I'm doing is I'm going to bring the working yarn under the project so that when you do seam, it doesn't, you don't have the working yarn going over the seaming that we already just made. So start off with a slip knot here, and then I'm going to just move my project up so I can start with the bottom of the row. I'm going to find that chain one space of the top granny square, and then the other one here, and I'm going to just hook on the slips knot onto my crochet hook from under the project. And you'll want to insert it through the little space here so that you can work it across. Secure it, and then you can see here that the working yarn is right here, and then what I'm going to do is just pull it out so you can work with the longer working yarn. Otherwise it might be a little difficult, and if you need a little bit more space you could just pull more. And then I'm going to do my slip stitch here in that corner, chain one spaces of both of the granny square, yarn over, and then we'll continue slip stitching into each of the stitches in the back loop only together. across. So a trick here is to insert your other fingers besides the index and the thumb here under the project like this. That way you can see where you're working and where the working yarn is. So we'll go into each of the stitches and make a slip stitch only in the back loop all the way to the other corner of this first set of the granny square, and you'll find that it'll get a little bit hard to work your slip stitches once you get closer to the in those two corners because of the horizontal seaming we just did. So I'll show you what to do next once we reach closer to the other end of the corners of the granny square. So it's gotten a little hard for me to do it kind of past a little bit halfway through the granny square here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go next into the next column here and insert my hand under the project like this so I could see the stitches that I need to go into. Just like that. And then once you realize that there is no more space, go ahead and pull the working yarn through the other space here, and then you'll see that there's a tiny little working yarn right under that little space before the stitches here. So you'll continue to do the slip stitches into the last couple of stitches here in this granny square. You can always use your fingers to feel for that working yarn under the project. So now I'm zooming in so that you can see a little bit closer, especially with this black yarn. It could be a little hard to see. But anyway, we've got about 2 more stitches here. So again, insert into the top stitch in the back loop only and into the next stitch from the bottom, and making sure that your working yarn is not the one that you are grabbing. So anyway, yarn over and then pull through all of the loops. And then we have 1 more stitch left, and this next stitch here is a little hard to see, so I'm just going to bring a needle. This is the stitch we just went into, and then that's the next stitch that we need to go into. So we'll insert the and then that one we just did, and this is the next stitch that we need to make our slip stitch in. So we'll go into the top last stitch here, and then into the bottom last stitch, and then yarn over and then pull through all of those 3 loops. So anyways, when we were doing our seaming the other way across, we could do these slip stitches into the chain 1 space, but now we're doing it over this stitch here, so we can't go into there, otherwise it'll be way too bulky. So what we're gonna do next is we're gonna insert your hook into that little space, yarn over and make a chain, and then we're just gonna slip stitch right over that horizontal seaming we made, and then we'll continue to find the next stitch. So that's the chain 1 space from the next granny square. And like I said, we're not going to make a slip stitch in that area. We're going to skip this space here, otherwise it'll be too bulky. So the next stitch we're going into is this single crochet right here, so only in the back loop. And for the bottom, you'll do the same searching, so that's the next stitch right there. So we'll go and make a slip stitch into these 2 first single crochet stitches of the granny square. And usually this bottom one is always a little harder because we just used up all the space, and then that one is a little hard to find. It's kind of tucked under the other seaming area. So now we'll continue making a slip stitch into each of the next stitches under only the back loop, and go all the way across using the same technique we did with the first granny square, and then making those 2 slip stitches across the vertical seams that you see here. And then once you reach the end of the project, you just yarn over and pull through. Now I'm going to show you here just a little bit how it is different when you do the seaming for the end of the triangles. You see there's a single crochet here, and then there's another single crochet below, and then now you have the chain 2 space of the triangle, and then you'll do a slip stitch into that last single crochet of the granny square from the granny square below here, and then we'll go back into the chain 2 space of the triangle and then into the chain 1 space of the granny square and slip stitch, yarn over, and then cut the yarn and pull through. So that is how you finish the end of the triangle. So you do the same thing on the other side, making sure to do 2 slip stitches into that chain 2 space. Now that the granny squares are all attached, I'm grabbing my F hook 3.75mm hook, and I'm going to show you how I finished the edging for the front of the vest here. So I'm basically going to just make single crochets all the way around these stitches. So I'll start off with a slip knot, and I'm going to start off in this corner. So I'm going to attach my working yarn here right at the slip stitch where we seam both of the granny square and that triangle together. So I'll attach my yarn here, make a slip stitch, and attach my working yarn here on my hook, and then pull that through and make a chain 1. We'll make a single crochet in that same stitch. And then continue making single crochet into each of the stitches until you reach the corner. So here at the corner, I'm going to make a single crochet into that chain 1 space, chain 1, and then another single crochet in that space. And then we'll continue making a single crochet into each of the stitches until you reach the next seaming area. So here at the seaming area, in the video here I actually skipped it, but what you really want to do is make a single crochet into that chain 1 space of that first corner here. And then you also want to make a single crochet into the seam. So in this part I did not take a video of it, but you need to go into the seam and then single crochet into the next corner space and then into each of the single crochet. So you'll do that and repeat that all the way around. And now I'm at the top of the other shoulder here, and I'm just going to make a single crochet in that chain 1 space and then also into the seam. And then we're going to make a single crochet into that chain 2 space of the corner, and then into each of the single crochet along the longer side of this triangle. So you'll keep doing that all the way to the center of the neck. So this is the neck area. We'll go all the way to the other end of the triangles. So here at the center of the neck, you'll see that there's 1 single crochet left on this triangle right here in this space. So you'll insert your hook into this single crochet, yarn over and pull through, and then we'll find that seam or that slip stitch that is vertical, and then insert your hook in there, yarn over and pull through, and then we'll insert your hook into the next chain 2 space on the other triangle, and then yarn over and pull through all of the loops. So that's a decrease for the neck, and then you'll continue making 1 single crochet into each of the stitches all the way back to the top, and then finally make a slip stitch into the first single crochet you made. And then you'll want to cut your yarn over and pull through, and then that's the end of making the edge for the front of the vest here. So you can see that we attach all the granny squares on its sides, and then we also made a edging around the whole piece of the granny square chest here, which is the front. So you'll do the same thing for the back of the granny square. The only thing different is that they're all squared, so you don't have to worry about the changes in the triangles. So the back piece, you have a 4x4 granny square, and like I said, I seam all of the granny squares together, and then once that's done, then a single crochet across the whole block of the granny square here. So making sure that you go into each of the chain one space with a single crochet, and then into the seam, and then also in the corner you do a single crochet, chain one, single crochet. So now that you finish both the back and the front of the vest, I'm going to show you how I attach both of these pieces together. So here, the bottom piece here is the front of the chest, and we're going to attach the shoulders together by making a couple of rows of single crochets so that we have a little bit more space for the head to fit through the neck. So I'm using my F 3.75 hook, and I'm gonna grab my black yarn, make a slip knot, and then I'm going to attach my yarn here at the front of the vest, the very corner, and then slip through, chain one, and a single crochet into the same chain one space, and then single crochet into the next single crochet stitch, and then we'll make a single crochet into the next, and we'll do that all the way to the other side of the granny square here. So your very last single crochet of this first row should be that stitch just right above the seam. So we got one more single crochet, so you'll see here there's a stitch right above the slip stitches, and so you'll do that last single crochet right here, and then turn the project, chain one here, and then single crochet into each of the stitch all the way to the end. So here's the last single crochet of this row, and then turn, and you will repeat. So you want a total of 5 additional row. So this is here, I'm at the end of the 5th row, and then now I'm going to show you how I attach that and seam it to the back piece of the left corner. So this is the left side of the vest, and right here is the neck. So I'm just going to pair it up to the left back of the piece here, but I'm going to have to turn my work around so that I can actually work it. So I'm just going to have the top of the vest here at the top, and then have the back of the vest down closer to me so I could work on it. So what I'm going to do is look for that stitch just right above the seaming of this back piece here. So what I'm going to do is insert my hook into that very first chain of the black, which is the top of the vest here. So we'll go into both of the loop, and then both of the loop in this stitch here for the gray as well. So we have a more secure edging, and you'll make your slip stitch here, and then we'll continue making slip stitches into each of the stitch in the back loop only together. So we'll go into the black first, and then into the gray. So we'll do that all the way to the other end of the corner here. And finally, when you reach the end, you're going to go into 2 loops instead of 1. So you'll go into 2 of the loops for the very last stitch, and then into that chain 1 space. So chain 1 space, yarn over, and make your slip stitch here, and then yarn over, cut your yarn, and pull through and secure it. So we've got this nice and neat attachment of the front of the vest. So you made a little piece of the shoulder here, and so you'll do the same thing on the other side. And then instead of cutting off the yarn when you finish making that side, now I'm gonna just continue making the neck area of the vest. So once you have the attachment here, you see I've got the back of the project, that I'm working on right now. So what I'm going to do is go into that very first row that you see closest to your hook here. So you see this is the seaming area, and then the row is just right above it. So you'll go into that stitch and make a slip stitch. I'm going to chain 1, and then we'll slip into that stitch, yarn over and pull through, and then we'll find that corner piece right here where this other granny square is. Yarn over, pull through, and then go into the next stitch, yarn over, pull through, and then yarn over and pull through all of the loops on your hook. So we made a decrease in that corner, and then we're just going to make a single crochet into each of the stitches across all the way to the other corner, and then we'll do the same thing. So I'll show you what to do once we reach the other corner. So here I'm at the other corner here. We've got 1 single crochet before the corner piece. So you'll insert your hook into that last single crochet, yarn over, pull through, and then insert it into that corner space here of the granny square, yarn over, pull through, and then you'll skip the seaming area, and then you'll look for that first row, and then yarn over, insert into that row, and then yarn over and pull through, and then you'll yarn over and pull through all of the loops, and then you'll just single crochet into each of the rows of that little shoulder area of the left side here, and then single crochet into each of the next 3 rows. So now you'll see that there's 1 more row before the decrease. So we're going to insert your hook into that very last stitch here, and into the next space and into the next stitch, and we're making a decrease here as well. And then we'll continue making a single crochet into each of the stitch all the way back to the front of the chest. So here in the front of the chest here, we're going to make a decrease. So you see that there's a decrease from when you first made a decrease around the front of the chest. So we're going to make a decrease in the next 3 stitches. So you'll see there's this 1 single crochet right here. So insert into that one, yarn over, pull through, and then insert into the decrease area, yarn over, pull through, and then into the next stitch, yarn over, pull through all through 3 loops, and then you'll do a single crochet into each of the next stitch all the way back to the other shoulder. So here you got 1 stitch, and then that decrease, and then into the next. So you'll make a decrease in this little corner space, yarn over and pull through, and then you single crochet all the way back to the beginning of this round. So you're here back at that very first stitch, and so we're just going to make 1 last single crochet and then slip stitch into the top of that single crochet. Here I'm just turning my work so I can see the neck here a little bit nice. So here we finished the top of the neck here. I'm just gonna go into that working yarn here. I'm just going to yarn over and pull through and cut off the yarn here so we can finish the neck. Now I'm going to show you how I finish up the sides, and as you can see here, I have one of the sides completed already, and this is the left side. And you can see that I made a couple of rows to increase the width of the vest, and then I seamed the middle of it, leaving a couple of stitches left at the bottom here for a split. So if you don't need the width of your vest to be as wide, you don't have to do this part. You can just end up seaming both of these squares together for the side. But I'm going to show you how I increase mine. So what I'm doing here is I did a couple rows of single crochet here for this side here. I'm going to do it for this back side as well. So I'll start here at the corner. I'm going to make a slip knot and attach it to this corner here. So slip knot, and then attach to this chain 1 space or the corner space here, and chain 1, and then single crochet into the next single crochet, and then single crochet into each of the stitches all the way to the stitch marker. And as you can see over here on the left side, there's a stitch marker I didn't tell you about, and that stitch marker is just the stitch right above the seam. So that will be the last stitch that you work into. So here we're at the last stitch. I'm just going to make a single crochet into that stitch with a stitch marker, which is the stitch above the seam. And then turn your work, chain 1, and then single crochet into each of the stitch all the way back to the beginning of the very first stitch. So here, single crochet in the last stitch here, turn, and then for me, I'm just making 3 rows of single crochets. So we've got 1 more row to do. And when you are done, I'm going to cut off the yarn over and pull through. And I'm just going to leave a stitch marker in this last stitch here so we can finish the edging of the bottom of the vest. So now I'm going to seam the side of both of these increases here. So I'm going to use my bigger hook and then start at the armpit area. And as you can see here, I got a stitch marker. I'm going to count up 5 stitch, and then on the 6th stitch, I'm going to place the stitch marker. And for the same thing, the opposite side of the vest. So we'll start here, and then we're going to slip stitch into that very first stitch under both of the 2 loops. I'm going to make a slip knot and attach it here. And then we'll go into the next stitch under the back loops only, and we'll make a slip stitch into each of the stitch this way all the way to the stitch marker, and I'll show you what I do when we reach the stitch marker. So here we're pretty close to the end of the seaming area, so there's 2 stitches left. So I'm just going to take this off. So I'm going to do a slip stitch in the next stitch here under the back loop only. And then for the next stitch, I'm going to insert my hook into 2 loops. So this is the final stitch. So under 2 loops, and then make a slip stitch, and then yarn over and cut your yarn here. And pull through to secure. So now I'm going to show you how I make the edges for the bottom of the vest. So I'm just going to turn it to the bottom of the vest. And I decided that I was going to take this pin off. So I'm just going to cut off here and then take my pin off here. And then I'm just going to insert my hook and yarn over and secure it. I'm going to start with a new yarn, and we're going to make an increase for the border of the vest. So I'll do quite a bit of rows here because I want my vest to be kind of long. If you want yours shorter, you could leave it as is and just make a couple rows just so that you have a nice more balance of the black, but you can also increase it the way I did. So I'm going to make an increase for the bottom of the front of the vest and the back as well. So I'm going to go ahead and do the front of my vest, which is here. So I made a total of 20 rows of single crochet. So I'm making the bottom of the vest here quite long because I kind of wanted the split on the side to be quite long. So as you can see on the back side, I haven't finished that yet. So now I'm going to show you how I make this length of the vest for the front and the back. So this is the front and here is the back, and I'm gonna start on this side of the corner here. So you can see that there's 3 rows of black here, and we'll start our first stitch on that black one and then go across the gray ones. So I'm getting my black yarn again using my F hook and insert into that very first row and I'm going to make a slip knot and attach my yarn here. So I'm going to chain 1, single crochet into the same stitch, and then single crochet into the next row, single crochet into the next row. So there's 3 rows, so 3 single crochet, and then we'll make a single crochet into each of the next stitches. So we'll make a single crochet all the way across to the other end. So here we're pretty close to the end of the row, and I've got 1 single crochet left here. I'm going to go into that stitch, and then we've got 1 more here in that space, and then we'll make a single crochet into each of the rows. So there should be 3 single crochet. So this is the last stitch right here. Then we're going to turn, we'll chain 1 here and then turn your project, and then we'll make a single crochet into each of the stitches all the way back to the end. And then from there on, you'll just make a single crochet into each of the stitches all the way for each row and increase your rows. So I have a total here of 20 rows of single crochets, and here I'm at the end of my very last stitch. So now what I'm going to do here at the end of my last stitch here, I'm going to turn my project and make a row 21. So here we've got the project facing on the right side. I'm going to chain 1 and then single crochet into each of the stitch all the way to the other corner. And finally here at the other end of the corner, in the very last stitch, we're going to make a single crochet, chain 1 and then single crochet in the same stitch, and then we'll turn your project, and because I just made a single crochet in that same stitch, I'm gonna go into the next row and make a single crochet and then single crochet into each of the row all the way to the very last row, and then you'll see that you have a couple of stitches from the panel or the front or the back of the chest. So here is the last row, and then we're just going to make a single crochet into the next couple of stitches here. So there's 5 stitches here. I'm only going to make 1 single crochet into each of the next 4 stitches. So you'll see that there's 1 stitch left. So that's a stitch left right here, and you'll see this stitch under that is the stitch that was seamed from the side. So you'll make a decrease here, so insert your hook into that stitch here, and then yarn over and pull through, and then insert the hook into the seam stitch, yarn over, pull through, and into the next stitch as well. So we're making a decrease in those stitches, and then we'll continue making single crochet into each of the next couple stitches here until you reach the row, the first row of the front of the panel or the back panel, and then you'll make a single crochet into each of the row all the way to the corner. So here at the end of the corner, I'm just going to single crochet, chain 1, and then single crochet into that last stitch, and then we'll go into the next stitch and then single crochet all the way to the other end of the corner. And then when you get to the corners, single crochet, chain 1, and then single crochet into that very corner space, and then we'll want to do a single crochet down each of the row here all the way to these last couple of stitches, and do the decrease here at the other slit, and then we'll do a single crochet into each of the single crochet and into each of the rows on the other side of the panel all the way back to the corner where you started it. So I'll be here at the other end of the corner where we finish the whole siding of the edge here. So I'm just going to single crochet into the very last stitch here, and this is the corner, so we'll chain 1 and then slip stitch into the very first single crochet you made for the border of the bottom of the edge here. And now I'm going to cut my yarn over, and then just pull through to secure. So as you can see here, I finished the edging on the slit, and then also made the front and the back of the vest here quite long. And then I also finished the other corner. So now I'm going to show you how I finished the edging for the armhole, and this side is already completed. So this is the left side of the vest, this is the front of the back of the vest, and then the gray is the front of the vest. And so I'm going to just show you how I finished this edging here, and then the corner space on the armpit area. So here on the other side of the armhole, this one has not been done yet. I'm just going to take the stitch marker, which I don't need anymore. And this is the back of the vest, and this is the right shoulder, and the gray is the front right side of the vest. I'm going to just get a black yarn here because I want to finish my edging all in black. And I'm going to start here with a slip knot, and then attach my yarn here. You'll see this corner space, and then that is right above the seam on these granny square here, and then also attached to the extension of the waist. And then you'll see there's 2 stitches. So in that second stitch from the corner space, I'm going to attach my yarn here and start my chain 1, and then single crochet into that same stitch, and then I'm just going to single crochet into each of the stitch all the way to the shoulder. And then here at the shoulder here, I just got one more single crochet on that gray border, and then we're going to make a single crochet in that chain 1 space, and then single crochet into the very first into the slip stitch actually here, and then into each of the row for the top of the shoulder here. And then into the next single crochet, and then we'll make a single crochet into each of the stitch all the way back to the corner in the armpit area. So here you can see we're here at the corner space. We've got 1 single crochet here. Insert your hook there, yarn over, pull through, and then insert it into the corner space, yarn over, pull through, and then into the next row, yarn over, pull through, and that is a decrease for that corner. And then we're going to make a single crochet into each of the row until you reach the other corner. So you're going to make a single crochet into each of the row and also into the slip stitch for the seaming area here. So now here at the other corner, there should be 1 single crochet, 1 row left before the corner space. And so you're going to make a decrease in these next spaces. So into that last row, and into the corner space, and then into the last single crochet here, and then yarn over, pull through, and then make a slip stitch into the very first stitch that was made. Now we're going to make a chain 1 and single crochet into each of the stitch for the round 2 here, all the way around to the top of the shoulder and come back to the armpit area here. So here at the armpit area, once you do all the single crochet, we've got 1 single crochet before the decrease stitch, and then there should be a next single crochet. So in those 3 stitches, we're going to make a decrease and then single crochet to the other corner area. So we got 1, 2, 3 single crochets, and then there's a stitch before the decrease stitch, and there should be another single crochet right after the decrease stitch. So we'll make a decrease in these stitches, and then finally slip stitch into that very first stitch of this round, and yarn over, cut your yarn, and pull through to secure. And so here you have a completed vest, and finally I'm just gonna go in and sew in all of my loose ends into the inside of the vest. Also, it is seam blocked so that you can have it nice and neat. I hope you enjoy my video. If you like this video, please thumbs up, like, comment, and subscribe to Pania Crochet. Stay tuned for more crochet video tutorials in the future. Thank you.